Hello and welcome back to Stu Structures. I am Mark Stewart and we're here for video 20 in the continuation of building the beanery, so stay tuned. Alright, so in this segment of building the beanery, we're going to continue on. We have most of the roofs all finished on all those original buildings that we put together, but we still have the buildings, the roofs on the buildings, the two hotel structures to build and put together. So we're going to start working on those and see how far we get on that. We have gutters to put on the original building that we put together, so we're going to continue putting the downspouts on those. We have an electrical service that came in on that end of the building that we haven't looked at yet, so we're going to look at that. Maybe continue on with getting some lights over the doorways in these. We did put together some mini LED light bulbs and stuff in some lighting fixtures, so maybe we can get some of those mounted in the building. Maybe take a look at how we're going to do the overhead bridge supports and how we're going to put the bridge together to go in between those two buildings. I kind of have to have some of that in place before we can put these two buildings together and mount them together as a whole structure, because it's just easier to get in there and work on those walls before we glue them side by side and there's very little room in between them. So we'll look at getting some of that accomplished, and we'll just see how far we can get in this video. Let's get started. First thing I want to work on here is more of the Hotel 1 building, the first hotel building we put together. So I came back here and just put all the window sills in it. The glass I had started in the last video. I finished a little bit of it, and then came back through and got all the blinds or shades in place as well in this building. So then we want to start on the roof now, and I measured down from the roof inside of the windows, and just basically there's about 2 feet in HO scale. So I cut 3 long strips and a whole bunch of short strips to use to cut for pieces to put all this together. So I measured inside, I cut the 2 long pieces and I cut the 2 ends and cut them 2 widths of the plastic shorter to go in between the other pieces, glued them in place, and then put some brackets in the corner just to keep them good and square. Now I wanted a similar pitch on this roof as the other roof, so I came back through here. I figured out I needed about this 6 risers for the roof in this. Now remember, the ends on this are flat roofs that come up to a peak about 10 feet in from each end, and then about every 11 feet on center there'll be one of these risers. So I went ahead and glued these in, and I had to cut a couple of them just a little bit short because you can see on both sides there's kind of an indentation where I had to put a piece of plastic on the inside of the basic frame where there's a piece of overlap on the walls to the hotel where they were glued together. So I kind of did that to beef those up and support that. And then once those were on and set up for a while, I came back and put all the angles in for the flat roofs on the ends that come up to meet the other ridge line on that, and just got all those 3 basic pieces on each end glued in so I can get a good solid frame to it. And on the other roofs I had a little bit of a sagging, so the roof ridge line on this, I just went ahead and put all these members in like this as flat pieces instead of a single piece up at vertical in there to give better support to the roof, so I just get less sagging. I'm using that real thin plastic from those signs, 99-cent signs on the ceiling or the roofs, and it's just real thin plastic. So then I come back and put this other mid piece in there all the way around to give it a little bit more support, and it's a real strong frame at this point, so I'm glad to start working with this. Next thing we're going to do is go ahead and put the plastic on the top of the roof. So I'm coming back here and just measuring the width of both sides and getting a good measurement, and it's even throughout. So I'm going to get an overall measurement and measure it a little long, because I'd rather have it too long and have to cut it down once I get it mounted than have it too short. So I just lay the top upside down on there and scribe the angles at the end on the plastic, and then just cut it just a hair shy of that mark so that I'm in the middle of that plastic, so the end wall has plastic to glue to as well. I mean, if I have to, I can always come back and put a small brace in there to glue to, but this worked out really well. The overhang into the gutter is a bit much at this point. Once I get the ends on here, I can mount it in the building then and mark the gutter and go ahead and cut the edges to where everything has a good even edge down into the gutter all the way around. And I'll probably, after letting this set up overnight, just come back and go ahead and just double glue everything to make sure this thin plastic is on there good. You can see here how it overlaps the gutters, so I'm going to have to come back and do that trimming, which is my next step, and I'll just do that off camera. And all the seams, they're not perfect, but once I get the standing seam on there, you won't notice any of those little imperfections, so that'll be okay at that point in time. So I'm okay with this. So the next thing we need to do on it then is just start marking all the standing seams and get it laid out. So I just come through like I did on all the other roofs and just mark 2-foot on centers on the long sides, and get all that up there. And it takes a little while, but once you do that, then you come back with a square and square off those marks and get them to the peak, and then you can square down the other side off of those marks so that all your lines from both sides meet up with each other. Sometimes there is a little bit of a discrepancy if you try to measure both sides. If you measure both sides and do it that way, make sure you do it from the same end. Now, before we put the standing seams on here, one thing we have to work with are the chimneys, because I need to get them glued on there before I put standing seams on, so I don't have to fight with those. So, the chimneys weren't done, so we have to come back and finish preparing those. So, I wrap each of the chimneys with a small amount of napkin or cloth or something and put them in this vise to drill out the hole where this pipe will go in the middle of that. And then I put the pipe in there and glue it into place, and then take it out. And it's, once I get all those done, then that's the first step on this. I had previously did the brick paint, just a basic brick paint on the bottom of these. So we have that as a starting point. And then I come back and, glue or paint the little pipes that come out of the tops of them, and the mortar cap on top that surrounds those going down into, where the pipes sit down into. I come back in and add all my mortar onto the into the brickwork, the mortar between the bricks, and then come back and dab the paint on all those. Come back and add a little bit of black paint to the insides of the pipes at the top once I round them out just a little bit with the X-Acto knife. I don't want them to look like a real thick wall pipe. And then I come back once I'm done with all that and glue them where they need to be on the roof. And then with this done, then I can come back and starting adding all the uprights for all the standing seams. On this particular photograph here, I have the main ridge lines glued on, but nothing else at this point. And then once all the standing seams are done, we have it to this point here. So we're ready to start putting some flashing on around the base of the chimneys. And once we have the, and this is just the same flashing I used for everything else, just tissue paper. These came off of some old cars that were wrapped in this car kits for railroad car kits. And some of the paint's still wet on this, but after I get the flashing on, I just come back and paint the entire roof, and we have one more roof completed. Once I set this down in, I may have to touch it up here and there a little bit where the paint doesn't adhere good to the plastic, but there'll be very little white showing once the second coat dries. And, just something else done off our list of things to do. Now let's start looking ahead at one of the projects we have upcoming. Remember, I've been talking about this overhead bridge that goes between the back two hotel buildings. And here's just kind of a somewhat of a picture of one side of it. And you can see about 15-20 feet out from the building there's a support on this side, and then in the next shot you can see that on the other side there's actually two supports set out from the building holding the bridge on that side before it actually starts into more of a suspension type bridge on either side that crosses over the many tracks of the railroad itself. And it's just slightly taller than the second story. I think because of the height that we're going to need for clearance of trains, I may raise it just a little bit more than what this actually shows. Here you can see the other side where it crosses the railroad. And during the time that we modeled, the roundhouse here actually had an addition added to it so the big EM1s and stuff could get into it. So the bridge actually walked across the top of the roundhouse. But here you can see how it sets out from the building before it goes into that suspension type of major bridge. So we're going to set the abutments out and just do basic handholds on them. This part of the bridge here we'll build sometime at a later point and date on either side to cross the railroads, but for now I'm not going to go into all this, and we may see if we can find one like this. We're going to backtrack just a little bit here. You remember I painted all these downspouts, and we need to come back and install them on the building. So as I'm going through and working with the downspouts on each side, I'm going to go ahead and add these little lamps that we worked on before with the LEDs above the doors as well. So here's just a shot of building one with all the lamps above the doors and the downspouts in place. Now I'm going to come back and touch some of this up, and there's quite a few places where there's shiny glue that I'm going to have to add some matte coat or something on top of to flatten everything. I did go back to the tower roof and go ahead and add the flag to the tower roof, so we have that out of the way as well. So building one is just about complete. I didn't get to the electrical service on the building. Maybe we'll do that in the next building. And then here's Hotel 1 with the downspouts added, all the seals, windows are done. We just got to get the roof on it, and it's a completed building there now. And then Hotel 2, we have the window seals, all the windows, the shades and everything. I think I showed earlier in the video with it done, but basically the outer shell of this building is done except for downspouts now on the staircase on the back side. So now, we've got this building to the point where, it's a real nice structure. So I'm just going to place it all together again here and kind of give you a shot of what the overall structure looks like at the end of this video here. Now, like I said before, and this kind of really starts to put it all in perspective about this being, truly a large building. We have the roof to work on in the one-story building between the two buildings. We have the overhead walkway, the roof on this building, the stairs here, and the enclosed structure on the back of the building. And here, even though I haven't done much work on them, I just kind of taped into place the pieces that will make up the walkway that comes down on the landing on this side of the building. And all the windows and doors, and the buildings haven't been glued together at this point. They're just setting there. I'm not sure if I will do that till I actually add them on to the layout, because it's just too big and bulky as one whole unit at this point. And it's a real good representation of this building. This is the earliest shot of that building known. Okay, so there you have this week's segment of Stu Structures. The beanery, it's getting there. I'm to the point that I feel like I can almost see light at the end of the tunnel. It's really becoming a very nice looking building. It's not fine-tuned. I did start going back in this segment and off screen filling the cracks in around the windows. I know in a couple of the shots I showed where I panned the various sides of the buildings, you could see light between the windows and the inside of the structure. So there are some cracks I need to fill, some paint that needs to be touched up. I'm debating whether I want to go back or not. When I added all these window sills to the bottom of the windows, there's actually a slight crack between where the window is and the window sill is below that. And there wouldn't have been something like that on the real structure. You know, it's just a fine, minute point that, you know, if you're standing back looking at it, you really don't notice it, but if you're up close and personal, you do. This structure, since it's in the Y of various railroad tracks, I mean there's multiple tracks on either side of this building, it's going to be set somewhere in the middle of a layout. So, you know, on one side of that, across several tracks, there's a roundhouse, and on the other side of the tracks where that footbridge crosses into town, there's actually an embankment, and it goes up into the town buildings, which I won't model a lot of that side, but I have to go up into that to a certain extent because the tower for the whole downtown yard is on that side. There's a water tank on that side. There's a freight station on that side of the track. So, you know, there's going to be a minimum of 2-3 feet on either side. This building is as close as anybody can get to this building to actually view it once it's on the layout. So I'm not sure how the very fine details, that's why I didn't go ahead and add some interiors. I mean, I can come back. It was nice to add all those little lights on the outside of the building. I think, you know, if you go into a nighttime scene, that's going to make the building more prevalent. But in any case, I like where this building's going. I'm glad we're to this point. You know, we still got a lot of things to work on. The stairs on the front and back, the back ones being enclosed. The flat roof on that one building. There's also a structure, some wooden structure on top of that building for access to that roof, whereas these other buildings had hatches on the 2-3-story buildings, and then the 2-story buildings could be accessed from windows, so I guess they didn't feel that it was necessary to put roof hatches or access onto the lower roofs. So in any case, I did add a few things that, you know, like the flagpole. I mean, I've never seen a flag on that pole in any of the pictures, and during our period of time and later on, the flagpole was actually removed, but you know, I'm a veteran. I like the American flag, so I put the flagpole on there, and I put a flag on there, and it's flying. You know, it's a good addition. I like adding some of these little extra things onto the building because they add a lot of interest to the building, like the two men inside the doors. You don't really see them unless you're really up close and personal. From a distance, you might catch a little glimpse of something in there. Whether you'll discern it's a human being or not, I don't know. But anyway, in the next case, we're going to start more on the overhead walkway that kind of showed you a glimpse of what's going on with that in this video. The staircases, the roof of the other building, and the other things that I mentioned, and continue on. You know, I'm finally being able to see an end in sight here. Maybe a video or two more. Maybe we can get this building done and move on to another building. You know, it feels really good to get this major structure out of the way. There are some big buildings, other ones on the layout. The roundhouse is over 6 foot wide. If you know, when I get to the point that I build it, but it's down the road. But the hotel and station that was built in the 1900 that superseded this structure, it's two big buildings. The Willard Hotel is just a huge, you know, multiple story structure, and the station itself is a 2-story at street level and then 3-story at track level, and it's all marble and brick and very ornate. So that build is going to be quite a complicated build. So we're going to save that for later on. We'll see which of I've got. Either want to do this freight station or the foundry in the next build. The foundry I'm kind of leaning towards. It was a real long structure, a lot longer than this, but basically 3 buildings. That was a stacked stone structure, and I think I'm going to cast the walls and then carve out the stone in them and stuff like that. I think as far as stone goes, you know, whether you're using some type of matte mache or plaster or anything, it just looks more like stone when you're said and done. So anyway, we'll get into more of that when I start the structure. I appreciate you coming back and watching my videos with me. Tune in next week for the next one. I'm trying to get out one a week here for a while until I get really busy with work. So like and share these, hit the thumbs up down underneath of them. Subscribe to the channel. There's a little red button under this video that says subscribe. Just push that and you're subscribed. And there's a little bell next to it. If you push on that bell as well, then every time a new video comes out in this series, you're notified when the new video comes out. So in any case, hope you're still enjoying model railroading this winter and getting some things done. Hope you're standing out there and scratch building some structures and playing with some of these techniques and learning and getting your abilities up to the point you can do some large, nice scale buildings for your layout. In any case, no matter what you're doing, happy model railroading.